This video is a tutorial on how record hierarchy works and how to use it in your timeline. An example describes the hierarchy design in a better way. Let's assume that you want to timeline the different wars that involved the United States. The example timeline shows some of those wars, such as the Quasi-War and the War of 1812. A separate group of the wars are considered part of the American Indian Wars, such as the Creek War or the First and Second Seminole War. For each of these wars there are a number of battles for which you want to use a separate record to better document each with a description text, locations, and other attributes. In a basic timeline, all those events will be displayed in a more or less structured manner. That approach works well when the number of records is limited. As the number of records increases, the space required to display all these records makes the reading of the timeline impractical. It might also become difficult to determine which battle is part of which war. Here is when the hierarchy features of Istoriam come into play. The hierarchy feature divides the record into parent records that encompass a number of children records. Using the hierarchy feature with our example, we start by creating a heading record to separate the U.S. Wars records from the rest of the records in the timeline. Heading records are always created as parent records. Under that parent heading, we create children records, one for each of the war we want to timeline. For those wars that will have separate battles, we will configure the war record as parent as well. So those records will be parent-child records, with the record being a child of the U.S. War's parent record but also themselves parent for other records. Because the American Indian Wars covers multiple wars, those wars are also created as parent-child records, with each record being a child of the American Wars record and themselves parent for other records. Finally, each battle is created as a child of the war record it belongs to. There are numerous advantages to this approach. The parent record event itself can cover the overall aspect of a war, its origin, main players, consequences, and other information, while the battle events can cover the details associated with each battle. For example, if we consider the Creek War, the war itself started on February 27, 1813 and ended on August 9, 1814. So there is an event record that shows that. But as a child to this war parent record, we have a child record for each of the battles that were part of that war. More importantly though, the hierarchy structure allows you to restrict the records being displayed. If you are only interested in reviewing the different wars that were part of the American Indian Wars but not interested at that moments in the battles of each war, you can then collapse, or hide, those battle records. You can now review the succession of wars without encumbering the display window with all the unnecessary battle records. You can even collapse the American Indian Wars records, reducing even further the number of records being displayed. Only when you care to see the details of a specific war that you expand, or expose, the children records off that war. This will allow you to structure the timeline to display different level of details. Now that we have a general idea on how hierarchy works, let's use the American Indian Wars record to see how it is configured. If we open the record in the Record Management window, the hierarchy configuration is set in the extra subview. We can see that this record has been configured to be a parent record, so it can have children records associated with it, but is also a child record of the U.S. War's parent record. To learn more about hierarchy, let's now create a new timeline from scratch with parent and children records. To create a parent record, click on the Add icon. Name the record parent and give it some basic attributes. Switch to the extra subview. To make the record a parent record, click on the Is a Parent checkbox. You can see for now that the Is a Child of checkbox is deactivated. This is because at this point, there are no parent records in the timeline for this record to be a child of. But that will change when we create additional records. Save this parent record. To add a child to this parent, you have two options. The first uses the same Add icon. Click on it to create a new record. Name a child 1 and give it some basic attributes and then switch to the extra subview. You can see now that the Is a Child of checkbox is active. If you check that box, the List of Parent dropdown is activated. For now we have one parent record, parent, to choose from. Note that as the number of records in your timeline increases, the number of parent records could become too large and somewhat impractical to sort through. The app provides you with means to limit the listed parents to those currently visible in the display window, or the parent records from the list of filtered records or from all the parents in the timeline. Save the new child 1 record. What you can see now is that the parent record has an orange triangle next to it. This indicates that this parent record has now children records associated with it. You can expand a parent record to show its children records or collapse it, to hide its children records, by right-clicking on that triangle. A second and faster way to add a child record is to right-click on the parent record itself and select the Add a Child option from the menu that appears. That will create a child record that has many of the parent record attributes, such as dates, color, tags, and level value. Name the record Child 2, updates the dates and switch to the extra subview. The Is a Child of checkbox is already set for you with the parent record also already selected. You can now save the record. Let's now create a child record that is a parent too. Right-click on the parent record and add a child. Name the new record parent-child, fix some of its basic attributes and then switch to the extra view. In addition to the child attribute being already set, check the Is a Parent checkbox. Save the record. Let's now add a child to that record. Name it grandchild and then switch to the extra view. If you now check the list of records in the drop-down menu of Is a Child of, you will see the 2 parent records that were created in the timeline. We will keep the current parent record. Let's conclude this already long video with a few important operation rules. All records created as heading will be configured by default as parent. This configuration cannot be changed. A record can be a child of only one parent record. A record can be a parent, a child, or both at the same time. You can see all the children records of a parent by left-clicking on the orange triangle. A record cannot be a child of itself. The app will not show the record you are working on in the parent list. The app will ensure that you are not creating loops within the hierarchy, that is, making a record a child of a record that is part of its children hierarchy. Hence, when selecting the parent of a record, all the records that are part of that record's children hierarchy will not be displayed as an option to be the parent. You can remove the parent status of a record simply by unchecking the Is a Parent checkbox. However, you have to be careful when you want to do that, as the record might have children records associated with it. If you remove the parent status of a record that has children records, the application will warn you about that. If you decide to proceed, the children records will become standalone records with no parents. In our example, if you remove the parent status of child parent, the grandchild record loses his parent and become a standalone record. If you want to delete a parent record with children, the application will ask you whether you want to delete the children records associated with that parent as well. If you opt not to delete the children records, those records will also become standalone records with no parents. That is it for now. We will see more example of hierarchy in other tutorial videos. Working with hierarchy might look complex and you might want to review this video more than once.